this, let me just remind our audience, anyone who's watching, if you have a question for Gordon Ho or about leadership in a crisis, please ask it however you're watching. We've got eyes on every channel, and we'll make sure we get your question, Gordon. So, Gordon, why don't you take us through a sequencing of what happened next?
Well, and there's a lot of things that happen next. And I'll just take a pause. If Cliff has some of the slides and pictures that we put together, Matt, because I think we resent it to Cliff. Cliff, do you have them? Okay. So why don't we show slide 2? Let's go to, slide 1. This is just a snapshot of what we talked about the timing. Slide 2, I think just in terms of one of the takeaways that Matt, you and I talked about was communication is key. And I think everybody has their various touch points that they utilize for communication. I think one thing that, and full credit to Jan Schwartz and then our corporate R&D team, innovation team with John Paget and our IT team, was getting high-speed internet to the guests. I think we all take internet for granted, although maybe many of us now, as we're all sharing the same bandwidth, maybe we realize that when we don't have it, how much we miss it. And getting it on the ships is not necessarily the simplest thing, in getting good high-speed internet. So that's something that we worked on. In addition, if you look on the visuals, if you want to bring it back up, Cliff, you can just see the website. We tried to make sure that there's daily communications posted on the website, on social media. Video content was an area that the content team's putting together to make sure we had appropriate videos that were created to inform guests, both on the ship and stakeholders, what was going on. Here's what is being done. Here's the latest information from the Japanese Ministry of Health, for example. And so I think information and communication was key, be it an announcement from the captain, which could be very reassuring, to onboard videos that they could see from their in-room TV. I think the key is to assess what do we have as touch points, what are the messages and information we have access to, and to do it as quickly and as real time as possible. This was really a 24/7 process to make sure that as things unfolded, that we were able to disseminate it and get it out there as quickly as possible. So that would be one
Gordon,
thing. I'd say, yeah.
Hey, Gordon, I need a quick question about this tactic in particular. So I'm imagining you're assembling all of these very helpful resources, and you're wanting to make sure that it gets delivered to, in this case, it seems like this is information servicing primarily passengers, right?
Well, I think all stakeholders, right? Because you have loved ones who want to know what's going on in the ship. So whether they get access to a website, we had a dedicated phone number for, say, families and loved ones for them to find out more, to be in touch, right? And I think that in this day and age, it's not just the passengers. This became clearly a global event that people are watching closely. So in terms of stakeholders, be it interested parties, other cruise lines that could learn from this, the media, all of this information in many ways was public, and we tried to make this as available for everyone so they knew what was going on.
And one of the things that I would think of as being a challenge for someone in your position in actually getting through to passengers in particular would be meeting them where they are, for lack of a better phrasing. So if you have, for example, passengers who are not accessing their phones regularly, or wouldn't think to go to a browser and look up Princess Cruises, or wouldn't be opening up a Princess Cruise app for onboard usage, you must have also then been thinking about other ways to make sure this information got to people that didn't depend on them knowing to go to a website or browser. So how were you, I guess, training people to change their behaviors on board so that they were more likely to find this information?
Well, I think you're trying to make it as simple as possible. You have things as simple as including things in a newsletter. We have a Princess Patter that we continued in terms of putting it under the door or outside the door so that they could read it, to a video channel, right? People, nearly everybody knows how to turn the in-room TV, and there were messages and posts as well there. So basically, just like the fragmentation of media, Matt, that we all know is taking place, even on a ship, you have fragmentation of media. And so you try to make sure you tackle it across everything, be it social, if they happen to be someone that looks on Twitter or Facebook a lot, if they tune on the stateroom TV, if they listened to the in-room announcements, right? That was mandatory. They heard the captain speak. So the key is to make sure it was ubiquitous so that people, and what's great is the passengers supported each other. As they learned of things as well, they would create their own groups. They helped disseminate amongst each other. So you had no shortage of sources of information. Clearly, there maybe one could argue there's never enough, but I think it was pretty well covered in that respect. And yeah. And I think, Matt, one thing that might be interesting is to talk about just, I think you and I talked about, it's like, what were some of the things that were done with the passengers on the ship? But I'll leave it to you. I think that the people might want to hear about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's exactly the right place to go. So we've established the communication protocol and the importance of ubiquity, a multi-channel approach to address a fragmentation, in this case, of how passengers gather their information. We've talked about timeliness of that information and sharing it with multiple stakeholders. And I am sort of phrasing this, Gordon, very deliberately as almost like a checklist of things to keep in mind. And I'm sure you were keeping these things in mind. But yeah, let's go to the next level and talk about the human touch here, and specifically, how did the Princess team start to think about not just informing passengers and their families, but bringing comfort to them?
Yeah, I think ultimately that was a critical part. Obviously, the health and welfare of the guests is paramount. But part of the well-being and welfare is just literally how you take care of them, their emotional state, their well-being. And if you look, and Cliff, if you could bring up slide, I believe it's 3. So this is an example. It's interesting. This is stuff that the actually guest posted. If you look in the upper left, this is Matthew Smith. He became kind of a food blogger. I don't know. I don't think he had many followers initially, but now he has thousands. He would post every meal and share commentary on what he thought. And for the most part, he was very much a fan of the food being served. I think at one point he said, Matt, that, hey, you're going to have to pull me off this ship when quarantine's over, because he was enjoying the food so much. On the lower left, you can see honeymooners Tyler and Rachel Torres. They were one of the youngest couples on the ship. They had chosen our cruise for their honeymoon. And I don't think they planned that this would happen, but nonetheless, there were moments such as Valentine's Day. Remember, Valentine's Day took place on the ship, and the one amazing crew of Diamond Princess did their best to try to make Valentine's Day special, whether it's through a rose, chocolates, and so forth. And I think that Tyler and Rachel said, you know what, they did a darn good job in given the circumstances. And I think the other thing that was really helpful for the crew, because